It began without warning. A Tuesday, unremarkable in its routine, then a flicker. Screens froze. Not a blue screen of death, but a chilling emptiness. Cars stuttered, engines dying mid-roar. The hum of civilization, a constant for so long, simply ceased. The initial silence was eerie. People glanced at each other, a shared question in their eyes. Was it a blackout? A power surge? Then came the realization. This was different. This was bigger. The world as they knew it had just blinked out of existence. The city, once a symphony of noise, became a tomb of hushed whispers. The bustling streets, filled with the sounds of life, were now eerily quiet. The hum of engines, the chatter of pedestrians and the distant wail of sirens had all vanished, leaving behind a haunting silence. Traffic lights blinked off, leaving an eerie glow at intersections. The once orderly flow of vehicles had ceased, and the streets were deserted. The blinking lights seemed to mock the absence of life, casting long shadows on the empty roads. Phones, rendered useless, were discarded in frustration. People, once so connected, found themselves isolated. The devices that had been their lifeline to the world were now nothing more than dead weight in their hands. People huddled together, seeking solace in shared confusion. In the face of the unknown, they clung to each other, finding comfort in the presence of fellow human beings. The bonds of community grew stronger as they faced the crisis together. News was scarce, spreading through panicked whispers. In the absence of reliable information, rumors and speculation filled the void. People clung to any scrap of news, no matter how dubious, in their desperate search for answers. Rumors like wildfire consumed the void of information. Each new piece of gossip added to the growing sense of dread. The uncertainty and fear fed off each other, creating a vicious cycle that threatened to tear society apart. A terrorist attack? A cyber attack? No one knew. Theories abounded, each more terrifying than the last. The lack of concrete information only fueled the speculation as people tried to make sense of the chaos. The only certainty was that the world was changing rapidly and irrevocably. The familiar had become strange, and the future was a dark, looming question mark. The sense of normalcy had been shattered, leaving a landscape of uncertainty in its wake.
It was like nothing we had ever seen. The scale of the disaster was beyond comprehension, and its effects were felt in every corner of the globe. The world had been plunged into a new reality, one that was both frightening and unfamiliar. We just didn't know what to do or where to go. The familiar landmarks of our lives had become alien, and the paths we once walked with confidence were now fraught with uncertainty. We were lost in a world we no longer recognized. Everything we relied on was gone in an instant. The systems and structures that had supported our lives had crumbled, leaving us to fend for ourselves in a world turned upside down. The collapse was swift and merciless, and we were left to pick up the pieces.
Military bases, once bastions of order, were plunged into chaos. The once meticulously organized routines were now replaced with frantic movements and desperate attempts to regain control. Soldiers, who were trained to handle the most extreme situations, found themselves in an unprecedented state of disarray. Communication systems, the lifeblood of command and control, fell silent. The once buzzing communication centers were now eerily quiet, with screens that once displayed vital information now dark and lifeless. The silence was deafening, a stark reminder of the vulnerability that had crept into the heart of the military. Radars went blind, their screens blank slates. The eyes of the military, which once scanned the skies for any sign of threat, were now useless. The loss of surveillance capability left the bases exposed and vulnerable, with no way to detect incoming dangers. Fighter jets sat grounded, their sophisticated electronics nothing more than dead weight. The pride of the Air Force, these jets were now mere metal shells unable to take to the skies. Technicians who usually ensured these machines were battle-ready stood helpless, their expertise rendered useless by the technical failures. The president, unable to contact his advisors or address the nation, was a prisoner in his own White House. The seat of power had become a place of isolation, with the leader of the free world cut off from his people and his government. The weight of the situation bore heavily on his shoulders as he struggled to find a way to restore order. The world looked to its leaders for answers, but they were as lost as their people. In crisis meetings, the usual confidence and decisiveness were replaced with confusion and uncertainty. The leaders, who were expected to guide their nations through turmoil, found themselves grappling with the same fears and doubts as everyone else. The chain of command, once unbreakable, had shattered. Officers who were the backbone of military structure now found themselves disconnected and unsure of their next steps. The clear lines of authority had blurred, leaving a vacuum of leadership that further fueled the chaos.
We were trained for many scenarios, but nothing like this. The training drills and simulations had not prepared us for a situation where everything we relied on failed simultaneously. As we huddled around the map table, the weight of our predicament became painfully clear. Our systems were down, and we were blind. It was a nightmare. The flickering screens were a constant reminder of our helplessness. The control room, once a hub of activity and precision, was now a place of confusion and despair. We were in the dark, both literally and figuratively, struggling to find a way out of the shadows of doubt.
With each passing hour, the veneer of civilization thinned. The once orderly streets now echoed with the sounds of chaos and confusion. People who once prided themselves on their civility were now driven by primal instincts. Supermarkets, stripped bare by panicked shoppers, became scenes of desperation. Shelves that once overflowed with goods now stood empty, a stark reminder of the fragility of our supply chains. People clashed over the last remaining items, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. Lines for gasoline snaked for miles, tempers flaring with every empty pump. The scarcity of fuel turned everyday commutes into perilous journeys. Arguments erupted, and the tension was palpable as people waited, hoping for a chance to fill their tanks. The social order, held together by the fragile threads of trust and routine, began to unravel. Communities that once thrived on mutual support now found themselves divided. Distrust spread like wildfire, and the bonds that held society together were fraying. Violence, once unthinkable, became commonplace. Acts of aggression that would have been shocking in the past were now part of daily life. The streets, once safe havens, turned into battlegrounds where survival was the only rule. People fought for scraps of food, for a drop of water, for the fleeting hope of survival. The basic necessities of life became precious commodities, and the struggle to obtain them grew more intense with each passing day. The city, once a symbol of human achievement, descended into anarchy. The infrastructure that supported daily life crumbled, and lawlessness reigned. The sense of community that once defined urban life was replaced by a desperate fight for survival.
We saw neighbors fighting over a loaf of bread. People who once shared friendly conversations over fences now viewed each other with suspicion and hostility. The scarcity of resources turned friends into foes. It was like the world had gone mad. The familiar routines and structures that provided comfort and stability were gone, replaced by a chaotic scramble for survival. The sense of normalcy was shattered, and the future seemed uncertain. Survival became the only thing that mattered. In this new reality, every decision was a matter of life and death. The struggle to stay alive overshadowed all else, and the hope for a return to normalcy seemed like a distant dream.
Days bled into weeks. The initial shock gave way to a gnawing fear. Food and water, once taken for granted, became precious commodities. Those who had stocked up on supplies became targets, their homes besieged by desperate neighbors.
The lucky ones escaped the cities, seeking refuge in the countryside. They formed makeshift communities, relying on bartering and their dwindling reserves of knowledge to survive. The old ways, once forgotten, were resurrected out of necessity.
It was a lone scientist, hunched over a battery-powered shortwave radio, who first pieced together the truth. Not a man-made catastrophe, but a force far greater, far more terrifying. The sun, giver of life, had unleashed its wrath.
A solar flare of unprecedented magnitude had washed over the Earth. The invisible storm of energy had fried electronic circuits, plunged the world into darkness. But the worst was yet to come. The sun's fury was only beginning.
Section 7. The Scorched Earth. The heat came gradually, a creeping inferno. Temperatures soared, turning asphalt into tar, metal into molten slag. Crops withered and died, their leaves curling under the relentless sun. Rivers and lakes evaporated, leaving behind cracked earth and the stench of decay. The air, thick with smoke from wildfires and the stench of death, became almost unbreathable. Millions perished, succumbing to heatstroke, dehydration, starvation. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones lingered, their suffering a testament to the sun's terrible power. Section 8. A new silence. The rioting, the looting, the desperate scramble for survival. It all eventually ceased. The cities, once teeming with life, stood silent. Skeletal skyscrapers, stripped bare by fire and wind, clawed at the unforgiving sky. The earth, once a vibrant tapestry of life, was now a scorched and barren wasteland. The silence was absolute, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind. The sun, once a source of warmth and life, now reigned supreme, a pitiless god in the empty heavens. Section 9. The Last Vestiges. Scattered across the globe in remote corners untouched by the worst of the sun's wrath, a handful of survivors endured. They lived in small, isolated communities, eking out a precarious existence from the scorched earth.
They had learned to live without electricity, without the conveniences of the modern world. They had rediscovered the ancient skills of farming, hunting, and gathering, passing this knowledge down to their children.
Section 10. Rebirth. Generations passed. The memory of the old world, the world of flickering screens and roaring engines, faded into myth and legend. The sun, its fury spent, once again became a source of life. Slowly, tentatively, life began to return to the scorched earth.
The Great Reset had come at a terrible cost, but from the ashes of the old world, a new world was emerging. A world where humanity, humbled by disaster, lived in harmony with nature. A world where the past served as a reminder of both the fragility and the resilience of life itself.